Alright, so today we're going to talk about Koi Child, self-titled album. Let's talk about it. This band is actually compiled of 7 band members. Originally, they were 2 different bands. It's a combination of Kashikoi, I hope I'm saying that right, and then Child's Play. So they are actually from Perth, Australia. They're a mix of electronic, hip-hop, jazz, a lot of jazz influence. This LP was originally released in 2016, so it's really late into even realizing that this album's even a thing. So something to keep in mind about this album is that Kevin Parker from Tame Impala really had a heavy hand in the production and the mix of this music, and if you listen to the album you can really hear his influences. Grease is the track that kicks off this entire album. Super jazzy, and it's just this huge melting pot of different sounds of trumpet. You got saxophone, trombone. Eventually it gets into this very moody kind of tone. Very, not dark, but just very, it's almost this melancholy sound. So Grease then bleeds into the next track, which is titled Wumpa Fruit, which is very fitting for the sound. So it bleeds into this track with continuing the jazzy tones. You start to get the hip hop flavor. And then all of a sudden, which took me by surprise completely, vocals finally. You finally get a vocal track. And that's what really kicks this hip hop, very urban, inner city, like almost late 90s kind of tone overall, and it really adds this really interesting effect to it. Something to also be noted about this entire album is actually the fact that everything is extremely tight. There isn't a single out of place sound. The drums snap, they're very on. The brass also is like, it's very in your face. It's almost a solo, but it's with trumpet and trombone, and it's very brash, very hard. It's there, and it lets you know that it is. Following that is this gorgeous and very like moody, very sassy saxophone solo that you get, and it completely changes the mood completely of the entire tone of the song. You get to the track Slow One, which is kind of lulling, but not in a bad way. For me, it just kind of felt like a kind of a change up of sorts. Slow One is very more so psychedelic. So you can tell that Kevin Parker's really starting to put his hands into the production. It's very Currents, because Currents had, it's either just come out or right in through production, but it's around the same time that these albums are released together. You can really start to hear parts of Currents, like Kevin Parker's inspiration for that album really start to infuse with this one, and it's very, it works. Like the overall tone of the album, it really blends well together. My favorite track coming up right after Slow One is 159, and it really kicks in the ass because you really get this jazzy, this very upbeat, very snappy song. It's like very hip-hop vibes. That's when the really urban feel of the vocals really start to come in, and you can't help but just move to the fucking beat of this song because it just can't help but grab you and just make you its bitch, pretty much. This entire album, for the most part, is just, it's just jazzy as fuck, and you should listen to it. It's fucking good, alright? I know it's good. Oh god. So after 159 you get this interlude of sorts. It's called Adventures for the Capsule. It's very much more piano driven, very slow down track, so you do get like almost these resting points after these very high energy songs. All of a sudden you get flipped right back into the mess, and the song Preserve is what follows this interlude. What grabbed my attention the most was this thick ass bass line. Like it's so funky, it's so nice. And then eventually you get the drums and the piano. That's another thing to note. The piano sounds in this don't sound oversaturated. It's not over synthy to the point to where it's like, alright, we can tell this is psychedelic feel, like we don't need you to bleed this into us. And then after that you just get this small little, maybe minute long track. It's just the band pretty much just dicking around, which is kind of fun because it does add this element like these are real people, which is nice for me at least. I don't know, not everyone's gonna be into that kind of thing, but I think it's fun. The overall tone of this album is fun. Like it's pure joy. It's just, it's amazing. Like you can't help but have this feeling of just overwhelming energy. It's really great. I think it really adds something to the album. And then we get Black Panda, which overall is probably the best when it comes to the flow of a vocalist. I really didn't notice the vocals, at least the lyrical points, until Black Panda. My overall attention is like focused at the instrumentals. You can't help but just hear the instrumentals, which is almost kind of a con in its own way, because I think the vocalist really has something to bring to the table, and his vocal melodies, the fluctuations in his voice, overall, it really fits the tone of this whole album. The instrumentals really flow together with it really well. And then after that, you get, Rap Trash. You get Rap Trash next, which it's funny because, so this track, as short as it is, I wish it was a little bit longer, because all you get on this track is drums and vocal. So that really makes you pay attention to the lyrics and the vocal performance. Another kind of con of this album is the following track, Japes. The first half of it I wasn't too into. The second half of it, all of a sudden you get this really groovy track, and it's, I don't know, I really kind of spaced on the first half of this song. It just didn't really do it for me until maybe about the 1.5 minute mark. It really starts to pick up for me. So the ending track, the fucking last track of this album, it makes me fucking giggle. I can't help it, because it's obviously a homage to the fact that they're from Australia, but it's a goddamn didgeridoo, and it doesn't make any sense in the flow of the record. I wish it would have ended differently, because it just left me wanting more of what was preceding it. Like, I'm like legitimately angry at the end of this album. I'm not okay with it at all. But overall, looking at this album from a broader spectrum, I think that this band really has something going for them. This is their debut album. From what it looks like on their social media and stuff like that, it looks like they're working on some new stuff, which I'm really excited for. I really want to see where this band takes this sound. I've heard artists or bands try to achieve the sound of trying to melt jazz, blues, hip-hop, electronica, and psychedelic rock, and it just hasn't worked out. But they've really found like a true balance between all these coinciding melodies and genres. Overall, this is a goddamn good album. Listen to it. Don't be shallow. Some people aren't gonna like it, but then again, I feel like this is a fairly accessible album, honestly. If you like your jazz, your hip-hop, I think this is gonna hit you. And especially the fact that Kevin Parker had a huge influence on this album. Even though it's just in the production, a lot of Tame Impala fans can really transition into this band. I think that it's a fantastic album. I think this project really came together really well. I'm very impressed. I'm a little upset with myself that I didn't hear this album earlier when it did come out, because it's very much up my alley. Overall, I'm gonna give this album an 8 out of 10. That's just what feels right, but definitely an 8. It's not quite there. It's not quite too put together to be a 9, but definitely an 8. It's good. Listen to it. Do it. Just fucking do it.